Classic Italian-American ravioli with a cheese filling. To make these efficiently, you really need a pasta rolling machine and potentially some special crimping and cutting tools, but if you're only feeding a few people, you can totally do this with no special equipment at all. We're going to make enough for 4 people right now. First, pasta dough. I'll crack 2 eggs into a mixing bowl, and the third one I'm going to separate. The white I'll use to help bind my filling, the yolk I'll put in the pasta. Egg pasta comes out especially nice when it has some extra yolks in it. The yolk deepens the color and the flavor. Beat those nice and smooth, then flour. All-purpose flour is totally fine for egg pasta, and I honestly have no idea why people measure it, because all you do here is mix in as much flour as the eggs will take. I'd guess I ended up putting in a cup and a half, maybe 180 grams. As soon as I've stirred in as much flour as possible, I'll move this over to a cutting board and start kneading it with a little more flour. The kneading will develop the gluten, of course, but it'll also help you get more flour into the dough than stirring can. For machine-rolled pasta, I find you really have to knead in almost every particle of flour the dough will accept, but it's fine if the dough is on the soft, wet, and sticky side. If anything, a wetter dough makes these ravioli easier to form because their seams are more likely to seal and they're more pliable. So really, as soon as this feels reasonably solid and smooth and only a little sticky to the touch, I'm gonna stop. I hand-kneaded that for less than 5 minutes. When I first started making fresh pasta, my big mistake was not letting the dough rest. You gotta cover it and just let it sit for like a half hour. After that, it's gonna roll way easier. Meanwhile, we can get some sauce going. I've got a shallot, a carrot, and a few garlic cloves. Peel and mince the alliums, cut the carrot into long slices, cut the slices into sticks, cut across the sticks to yield a brunoise. Not everybody puts carrots in tomato sauce, but I sure like them. They make it chunkier and sweeter. A wide pan on the heat with some olive oil. It's amazing how quickly you can make a tomato sauce if you do a small amount in a very wide pan. I'll throw in my veg, and I'm on pretty high heat here because I'm available to continually stir this, which should keep anything from burning until we've evaporated out a ton of water. 3 or 4 minutes later, everything is soft and starting to brown, so in goes a can of whole plum tomatoes. I like this brand because they're soft enough to just break up with your spoon. I'll throw in a pinch of salt to start with, some pepper, and then a little white wine. If you've got an open bottle around, it's not necessary. And if I stir this continuously, I could cook this on medium-high heat and have sauce in less than 10 minutes. I want to do other things with my time right now, so I'm going to reduce this to a simmer and just stir it occasionally while I work on my filling. The classic Italian-American filling is chiefly ricotta cheese. The full-fat kind has considerably stronger flavor and softer texture. I'm putting maybe a cup in there, like 250 grams. If you have some mozzarella, it's nice to grate some of that in. The mozz really helps bind the filling so it doesn't just ooze out the second you cut into the ravioli. And then a hard grating cheese for flavor. I'm using pecorino. For seasoning, I'm just doing pepper, salt, and garlic powder, though some lemon zest would be very nice too. A lot of people use nutmeg. I'm not into that, but I won't judge you. First, you kind of have to cut this together to get the egg distributed through, and then you can start stirring. You could use whole egg in the filling with the yolk. I'm just using the white because I'm making a small quantity and I don't need that much egg. Also, this will increase the color contrast between the filling and the pasta. The quantities are obviously not precise, but for this much pasta, you'll want to have about a cup and a half of filling ready to go. I didn't make quite enough here. I ended up having to mix up a tiny bit more later on. I'll give that a tiny taste for seasoning, though that comes with some risk of foodborne illness. Salt content seems good since all those cheeses are naturally salty. Done. The flour particles in this dough have hydrated. You can feel how much smoother the dough is. These ravioli are going to be as simple to assemble as my sofa from the sponsor of this video, Allform. We've been lounging around on this 3-seater with Chase for the better part of a year, and she's holding up great. Allform leathers and fabrics are stain and scratch resistant. Great for pets, kids, and food. I also work with Allform's sister brand, Helix, and just like a Helix mattress, Allform sofas ship to your door in boxes. No moving truck needed. Another advantage of this is that you can buy nearly any configuration of seats and corners and chases and ottomans and stuff that you can imagine. It's all modular, so design whatever sofa you need for your space. Assembly is tool-free. It might take you as little as 15 minutes. For colors, I chose the whiskey leather and walnut legs, but you can mix and match a million different looks. If I decide I want this to be wider, I can order another seat and snap it in. It's great. And you can save 20% on your Allform sofa with my link in the description. 20% off with my link downstairs, plus free shipping in the US, and they'll come and take it back within 100 days if you decide you want a refund. Thank you, Allform. Don't forget to stir that sauce occasionally or it's going to burn. Tomatoes are filled with sugar. First thing I'll do with the pasta dough is take it off the floured cutting board and put it on the clean counter. I want to roll this out into a cylinder, and that's way harder to do on flour. It helps to have the dough stick to the clean counter just a little bit. That's all I can do, and that's good enough. Now, here is my no rolling machine procedure. procedure. Use a knife to shave a thick coin of pasta off the cylinder. Flour it up and then use your fingers to pinch it out into a reasonably flat disc. Your fingers afford you a lot of control in terms of manipulating the shape and keeping it reasonably circular. Then you could just use a rolling pin or a little wooden dowel, but I find a pint glass does a great job and it's easily at hand. Just finish rolling that out nice and thin. Keep it floured or else it's going to stick to the glass or the board or both. Grab a spoonful of filling. To me, the right amount always feels like a little less than is my instinct to deposit. Grab the side and drape it over, then pinch the pasta together right up to the lump of filling. This is Slavic pierogi technique that I'm borrowing here, and it works great for ravioli. Indeed, you could boil it just like that, but if you're afraid that no one is going to click on your video if it doesn't have a pretty thumbnail, you could trim off 3 sides like that. That gets you 3/4 of the traditional square ravioli shape. Let me show you that again. Slice off a coin, flour it, smoosh with your fingers into a round, use a glass or anything else smooth and round to roll it thin. Really flour the pasta aggressively or you're going to have sticking problems. A little spoonful of filling goes right in the center. Try really hard to not touch the filling with your fingers. That's going to make the whole process way messier. Fold the dough over on itself and start pinching it down right around the filling bulge. That helps you expel any air pockets before you get the outer region sealed off. Press really hard. If you don't, the seal might fail during cooking. If you want it to be pretty, trim off the 3 sides. There, almost a square ravioli. It might not look like it, but the ravioli I'm shaping here are going to be very big. Egg pasta expands a ton when it boils. These are going to swell by like 50%. So if you want them small, you got to start with them really small. But honestly, making them big just saves on labor. If the seams are not sticking, you could always wet your finger and use a little water as glue. Again, because I made this a pretty wet dough to begin with, I'm not having any trouble sealing these off. Is this a lot of work? Yeah, this would be a special occasion dinner at my house for sure, but it's fun and fresh egg pasta is shockingly delicious and different from other pasta. Also, I found that I'm far more likely to actually make it if I use one of these no-roller methods. I have a pasta roller, but it's a pain to get out and set up, and it's a real pain to clean. If I was trying to make and freeze 100 ravioli, I'd use my roller, but for 20 big ones, nah, the pint glass is better, I think. Beautiful. My sauce is done, and I've had a big pot of water coming to a boil. When I make fresh pasta, I find that I need to salt my water more aggressively than I would for dry pasta, maybe twice as much salt. I'm not sure why that's the case. Maybe fresh pasta absorbs less, maybe it's just thicker, I don't know, but it's true. In the ravioli go, one at a time to keep them from sticking to each other. These only take a few minutes, and fresh egg pasta is very forgiving in terms of cooking time. You don't have to nail it like you do with dry pasta. Once they float, they're going to stay nice and al dente for a few minutes. What I look for is the color change. You can see how the pasta in the thicker center is still a little darker yellow. In part, that's because it's still a hair undercooked. Because the center is less transparent, it's always going to appear darker, but I look for that center starting to go a little more pale, and then I figure they're perfect. These took 3 minutes. Drain them out, and I'm going to retain a good amount of the pasta water in there to thin out my, frankly, over-reduced tomato sauce. If you're not good at eyeballing the amount of water to leave at the bottom of the pot, you can always just catch some in a glass in the sink and then pour in exactly how much you want. Pasta water is full of starch and it lends a really nice silky quality to sauces. I'm going to throw in a big handful of whole basil leaves, but almost any herb in any configuration would be great. And there you go. That's a celebratory dinner for 4 right there. Or maybe 5 or 6 with some salad and a loaf of crusty bread to mop up the extra sauce.
Listen, let him fill up on the bread.
Now, mechanical ravioli assemblers can get proportionally more cheese into the center, but I honestly prefer this proportion anyway, especially if you use a more flavorful cheese in addition to the ricotta. You have to push pretty hard with your fork because the egg pasta is deliciously firm and chewy. Despite all that fork pressure, you can see the mozzarella and the egg white are holding the filling in place. It doesn't just slip out the instant you cut through the ravioli. This is probably my favorite dinner growing up, and every time I make it, I wonder why I don't do it more often. I mean, I know why. It's because it's a lot of work, unless you live in a place where you can buy really good fresh ravioli. If you do, awesome, buy it. If not, try this. Maybe you'll realize that the store-bought ravioli you thought was good wasn't.